It's Dee on the spot.
Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before I get to our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone to please like and subscribe down below if you enjoy this content. We greatly appreciate it. We have William Bowers of the band XII Olympians. William, great to have you on the show.
Hey, what's up?
So why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory, what got you into music, and what your influences are?
Oh, man. So, I guess, where to start, I've always been inspired and always been making music for most of my life. I remember being like a weird 10-year-old kid, just like a bunch of graph paper, writing tabs and stuff, and not doing my homework.
Yeah.
But ironically about that, my passion for music is it grew to such a huge extent that being a teacher is a big deal to me with all of that. And some of my biggest influences are definitely more on the IDM side of things when it comes to electronic stuff, and definitely more on the kind of avant-garde jazz sort of aspect of things as well, from a compositional and from a musicianship standpoint. Guys like Frank Zappa, or like Sun Ra and his orchestra kind of stuff. It's a huge influence for me. But then I lump that with Taiko and like Woods of Canada as well.
Oh, that's awesome. So how did the band XII Olympians come to be? Is there, did you do any, we've had people on here who've said that they've done Craigslist. I hope that wasn't the case for you, because I always warn everyone that can be a hit or miss when it comes to Craigslist. But how did you guys form the band?
So the way it actually runs is, it started as my solo project that I've maintained throughout the years. And originally it was called Looking for Clovers, which I thought was really fun. But then I was like, oh no, I'm going to lump myself in. It's just like only a post-rock band, which I think would be creatively limiting as time goes on. And what I found was really fun is there's a night where I was night hiking on top of this mountain, and what was really special about it, I was thinking, man, I've been reading so much Plato lately. I've been just all about Socrates, and I've just been really enjoying just getting to understand and get to know the cultural context of Hellenistic culture. And it's like, I really enjoy the idea that at that time in Western religion, what was really fascinating and beautiful was how you take human concepts and human ego and you apply that to, nature, rather than nature being applied to human ego. And that's where you get, all these Greek gods, and you get all these beautiful, cultural concepts that persist throughout history within that specific pocket of Western culture. And I found that really inspiring, because it's like, well, worst case scenario, I could make 12 studio albums and about different weird stuff,
So yeah, I find that really interesting. I was a history minor myself. I didn't major in it because I didn't want to become a teacher. It's just not my style. But when you were researching all the history stuff, when it comes up with 12 Olympians, is there a specific reason why you picked the number 12?
I have this vision where instead of it being just me playing all these shows all the time, the vision is to have as many musicians as possible performing with me on stage and doing these improvised electronic music sets where, we're kind of like a free-form jazz band, but instead of, our arrangement or instrumentation being locked with jazz ensemble stuff, it's a music technology ensemble with the heart of a jazz band. And that's kind of how I curate the musicians that come in and out of my shows, or recording, or collaborating and doing fun stuff. And I even though I guess maybe someone would consider me a band leader, or maybe consider it still a solo project, but I kind of have this open philosophy where if someone has that fire in their belly to make beautiful music and they're inspired, and doing something that's chill and groovy is intrinsically fulfilling to them, then I go out of my way, or I make them in my way, to help give the music I make as a platform to help them become musically fulfilled as well, and share that experience, and share that creative, sort of surge of energy that comes from creating improvised music on the fly, live on stage for people.
So have you always been a solo project, or were you in bands before? How did that come to be?
Oh, yeah. I was in several bands. Context, I grew up in Sylva, North Carolina, right outside Asheville, North Carolina. And they're probably the first band I played in was Luke Webb and the Imperative, and it's this wonderful kind of super punky, folkish, kind of almost rock, but not really kind of band. And a lot of the members in that band that I played with, they were all much older than me. I was like 18, 19 years old. I was playing clarinet for this crazy folk, punkish folk band. And these guys were all so much older than me, and just this whole inspiring generation of musicians that, kind of made me the way I am today. They were my role models, and I got lucky and had really great role models for what a outstanding good musician is. And I played and performed with those guys, and shortly after that, when I had a little bit of a hiatus went on with that whole thing, I had a bunch of friends from high school I grew up with out of nowhere. We all just bumped into them, and they were setting up this newer band they were going with, and wound up becoming a founding member of this super fun party funk band called Porch 40 down in Colby, North Carolina. And those guys are still doing fantastic and great and collaborate a lot. But I wasn't able to be there in person, because I had a lot of other opportunities and things going on, so I had to leave that area. But they're doing amazing, and they're super fantastic, great guys. But after that, it was just kind of like I released this kind of like EP where I was doing super chill folk music, and then I just got to go live in Scotland for a while and make a bunch of music and do a lot of really fun stuff and getting to know musicians out there. And there's this guy called Dog in a Swing, and his folk project, he transitions from being just a solo act or having a large collection of guest musicians, or he has this like open ensemble concept. And what's great about that open ensemble concept is he could do any show anywhere at any time, either by himself or with like 8 people. And that was such a radical concept I'd never heard of before. And it was this random Scottish folk musician, and that sort of mindset has opened my eyes to the idea of how a solo project doesn't have to be a solo project. You could just be Benny Goodman, or you could be like any other great ensemble leader, and find musicians to empower and uplift that want to do the same musical goals that you do, and kind of ride on this like empowerment-oriented sort of boat of success.
So what was Scotland like? I mean, that's just such a place. I mean, if you want to go folk music, you go to either basically the Scandinavian countries or like the United Kingdom, Scotland, Ireland, that area. That's just where folk music is just so pronounced. How did that impact you when it came to your writing style, your experience abroad?
So there's this place called the Forest Cafe, and there's this kind of singer-songwriter workshop that's going on over there. And I did a lot over there too, and helped out with that. And what I discovered is the musicians that were the most skilled and were the most humble that I got to hang out with and really get to just pick their brains is these guys. One, they work to a point of intuitivity, and what I mean by intuitivity, they love the process of making music so much that the art of creating it is their song. That's their expression. And that sort of thing is what totally radically changed my entire concept and idea of how I view and value the music that I give to people versus the music I just make. And I wound up falling in love with the process so deeply that it kind of got me into this sort of live looping idea and concept. And at that time, I was just kind of doing a lot of stuff with an acoustic guitar, just singing and all that. But when I came back after that, I quickly got exposed to a band called Papadosio, and really got super hard into a lot of super heady jam-phonica. And I realized that music technology has that beautiful potential that you get when you pick the banjo, or when you pick up an acoustic guitar. And when you understand the technology behind it at an intuitive level, like you would with a random stringed instrument, then the synthesizer or the drum machine becomes my folk instrument. That becomes my instrument of expression, and something that I can just touch and look at and like, oh, I understand this. And it took a lot of really hard work, but there's a lot of people out there who want to do that. And there's, being an educator in that has been a very fruitful, beautiful thing in my life.
Yeah. So when you were starting out your band, what would you say is the biggest struggle that you had to overcome, and how did you overcome it?
And the biggest struggle I've had to overcome. That's really, really coming to live up to and own up to the expectations that come from having the responsibility of guiding another musician towards musical fulfillment in an ensemble. I only know a handful of guys who are really fantastic, musicians, and some wonderful women, some very great jazz musicians as well. And it's when someone's coming to you and they're like, "Man, I really enjoy doing this," that means they're getting fulfilled. And that's a very delicate thing. And to be the one who's the curator and the one who's responsible for putting it together and gluing all that together, that's something that I had to learn very quickly how to value and how to really live up to, because when you have others who are enthusiastic and they have this image and idea of what's going on, if that image or idea or that concept is radically changed or radically questioned, it makes it difficult for things to really kind of go smoothly. And I think a big part of that is, like, if someone's going to really take the helm as someone who's responsible for putting together and curating something, then there comes that responsibility and thoughtfulness that needs to come with this. Like, when you're bringing musicians into your space to play music with you, you're also dealing with their time, their feelings, and you're dealing with their self-worth and all of that stuff, like all that really hardcore deep stuff that I think is something that has led me to a lot of current success with being thoughtful of that and respecting people with that sort of depth when we're playing music with them.
Mm-hmm. So when you were starting out also, did you always know what type of genre of music you wanted to play, or did you have any like experimentation when it came to different genres? What was your process like determining what type of music you would play?
When I teach my lessons on composition and music production, a big thing I talk about is emotional palette, and I think about really instilling the skill to envision the aesthetics of the music that I want to create or someone else wants to create. And when I think of that, I think of like this morning, I got 4 hours I got to fill up, and I'm live looping all of it. I'm doing it all improv. I'm sequencing a bunch of synthesizers and drum machines, and I just have my Ableton push, my APC 40, got a couple of my banjo, an Allen string guitar, and electric guitar, and I got a bunch of other stuff, and I'm thinking, what the heck am I going to make? So I think about where I'm playing at gives me opportunities to explore different genres, like this breakfast bar. This was the first time in a long time that I'd be able to play at a venue and do almost an hour straight of just like variety of ambient music, or ambient ear rap, or electronic music. And that was a really special experience for me, because that's music I value very deeply, but it's not practical for me to perform that somewhere, or if I'm going to do it, it's going to be on a live stream on the internet that someone's going to see. This is for my own enjoyment. Mm-hmm. But other places, like when I play shows in Asheville, like a sake bar that I used to bartend at and play shows at regularly, Ben's Tuna down there, my live sets would definitely curate more towards the jazz rock side. I'm gonna instead of fiddling around with a bunch of ambient music, I'm like gonna try and get as many live musicians as possible. It's like, hey guys, what kind of jazz do you like? What kind of rock bands do you like? What are our favorite bands? Like, what makes us happy? And like, what about that music inspires us? Because we're gonna do that together. Mm-hmm. And I think first and foremost it's about always having fun, and always what I'm doing is something that's fulfilling for me. Then after that, I start thinking about the genre, and I think about the practicality of, am I going to perform this for people, or am I going to record this for enjoyment for myself and for other people who like that same music? So I ask those questions, and then I mix and mix and just as many genres as possible, and try to get as artful a unique sound as possible with my stuff.
Have you found it overall been easier, or has it been harder when you're mixing genres, especially when it comes to songwriting process? I mean, it can be difficult for some artists. I have talked to two other bands that I've had on before that have been multi-genre bands, and they said that it was both a blessing and a curse to play multiple genres, because it is kind of sometimes hard to find that balance lyrically where you're trying to make it sort of even, without favoring a genre over another. Have you had that similar experience?
Not really. Because what I do when I'm performing and playing shows is pretty well thought out and purposeful and unique. in the regard that like I also improvise all of my vocals as well,
Wow.
and I improvise my lyrics when I'm doing that. So I try to freestyle everything, and there's like a kind of a personal challenge. And sometimes if I'm playing it somewhere, if I'm going to be performing somewhere where it's expected that I'm doing something consistent or something that I've had on my recordings, then I have those stems prepared so I can perform and reproduce those things live. But they're never going to be the same. Kind of like the Grateful Dead, Yeah. When you hear, people enjoy listening to bootlegs of Grateful Dead concerts because in Grateful Dead concerts, people get to enjoy, listening to something unique and different. It's like remixes before remix happened.
So we love to hear first song stories. What was the first song that you ever came up with? What was it called?
Oh, man. Man, I'd say probably the first song I ever completed was 14 years old, and I was with one of my best childhood friends. And we were on this old computer with a totally just janked up, buggy as hell crack of FL Studio. And we were just like these teenage kids who were super nerdy, and we were playing video games all the time. I think at that time we were messing around. I think we were playing Elder Scrolls Oblivion, or maybe that was like right before or around it. And so we just play video games all day and make super heady beats. And I'd say probably is this just super organ-like little thing. It was just a lot of arpeggiated little synthesizer stuff, and I'd say that probably was my first completed song. But before that, I was always like writing down riffs on guitar and stuff, and enjoying fun stuff like that. But I'd say probably like my first like, this is like music is my life. I'm gonna do this. I'd say it was probably when I was in high school, my senior year, when I was just writing a lot of classical music. It's getting super in the Gustav Mahler.
Yeah. So I was going to ask this before, but when it comes to, you said improvising lyrics live, where did that inspiration for that come from? Because that is not something that we have heard a lot on. You're actually the first one that says that they improvise their lyrics sometimes when they're performing live. Where did that come from?
So a lot of hip hop artists will freestyle their stuff, and I was thinking, oh man, that's so radical. It's rhetoric turned into performance art, and the mastering and turning into an art and a craft itself, being able to turn stream of thought into a purposeful, performance-driven sort of concept. And I know there are guys like Keller Williams and stuff, folk artists and all that. But the idea initially came when I was living in Scotland and I was busking, and I was like playing the same 4 or 5 Grateful Dead songs because everybody else was playing Beatles, and I'm just like this random American dude. I'm like, you know what? There's a lot of tourists out here. I bet it would throw some tourists off if I did some Grateful Dead covers. Mm-hmm. And after a while, dude, playing Ripple like 100 times, I was like, I wonder if I can challenge myself to just start like singing about what I see. And I went pretty heavily into object writing, and I studied a lot of poetry and all that. And I thought, like, man, if I think about the structure of what I want to do, and I think about the song form of what I want to do, and I already know the chord progressions of what I'm doing at an intuitive level where I could just do a whole song with whatever on guitar, what's to keep me from, if I can improv as an instrumentalist, what's going to keep me from doing that as a vocalist, as a songwriter? And so I would be busking over in Rose Street Gardens in Edinburgh, Scotland, and I'd be just improvise. I'd just be singing songs. I would, sing about poetry about something I felt that day, or something that I saw, or something that I saw someone else feel from afar, and I would get really deep with it, and I would challenge myself to express it as simply and as poetically as possible. And then I have like a sort of aesthetic curation of thinking like, okay, I would sit there for like a minute and think, okay, for 15 minutes, I'm going to be improvising right now. And in this 15 minutes, I'm going to sing like a mixture of Bon Iver and James Blake, and I got my nylon string classical guitar, and I'm going to be just doing a bunch of jazz chords, and I'm going to talk about feelings and my emotional palette for the feelings that I'm going to turn into lyrical content. It's just going to be like, man, it's really rainy out here. I'm in this alcove, and there's not a lot of people walking by, but the people I see walking by are all soaked up, and there's a bunch of people that are walking by themselves without even an umbrella. And I'm just like, man, what's their day like? What's going on with that? And I would ask these questions, and I'd get in my notebook, and I'd be like, all right, here are my prompts for songwriting. And I would just run with it. And I did it for so long when I was living out there that I really broke it down into a process so I can practice it. And, taking the practice and concept of turning songwriting as my main instrument, then I was able to hone in and quicken the thought process, or find intuitivity to certain things, or master my instruments and my tools to a level where I don't have to think about it to use it. Or like when I'm improvising a sequence and I'm performing a show like this morning, I'm thinking like, all right, I got a vocoder, and I've been listening to a lot of Black Moth Super Rainbow, and I really love how the Black Moth Super Rainbow does their stuff with vocoders. I think it's fantastic. But I don't really know very many other bands who do stuff with vocoders, so I'm going to do as different as possible take on that, but I'm also going to take some inspiration from that. So I, this morning I sang about, how hot it was, and that, I try to express that as poetically as possible and try and tell the story and improvise a little bit of storytelling with it. And while I was doing that, because I mastered my tools to a level of intuitivity, I was able to drum sequence stuff and like play a bunch of chords on my push and my guitar, and like I understand my my Moog synth, this guy right here. Nice. It's Moog Mother 32, and when I would do things like live patching, I would have my goal of what I want to do, but then I'll just very quickly break down the steps to achieve that aesthetic goal, and however small a goal that is, or how big a goal that is, and then really just kind of like follow the steps towards that and follow through with that concept and idea as best I can.
Mm-hmm. So that's super fascinating, man. Improvising, I really think that improv really helps. I mean, for those of you who don't know this podcast, I usually like to do half scripted and then half improvised, because I do think that improvisations can really help give a more like human feel to it, as opposed to, bands just playing their same music. So I really appreciate what you're doing, man. Do you think that your improvisation that you do at live shows really helps you creatively when it comes to coming up with like stuff to write for songs? Because does it seem to just expand your knowledge of what you could say and just kind of gives you a better vocabulary, and it really helps?
I think that it has immensely. I look at it as like a shotgun fast trial and error of what works and what doesn't work. And the challenge of doing it live definitely adds that sort of pressure of really doing my homework, and really like, if I'm going to attempt to do something, I practice it beforehand, or I think about it like, hey, am I really capable of doing that? And I always try to not be negligent with that concept, because I think I've had a couple shows before where like I really like went a little too far outside of my box, and I had to like wrangle it back in, and I get into these buildups of cacophonies of chaos, and learning how to be as simple as possible and as purposeful and intentful with the ideas that I sequence, the ideas I live loop, or the ideas that I'm complimenting from other people's ideas, or helping guide my friends who perform with me into not getting lost themselves in doing an improvisation sort of oriented sort of thing. And the trial and error is exponential, because I do it a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I love to ask people about on this show is performing live, the thrill of performing live. We've had many people come on and describe it as unlike a drug, as in like any drug that you could ever take. Just what does performing live mean to you personally? And sometimes when you're performing as a solo act, do you kind of get a different feeling than you did when you were in a different band that had a lot of members? How does that work for you, and what does performing live mean to you as an artist?
I think that what it means to me is it's where, yeah, I could totally be that guy who just spends a year on like 5 songs and values those songs incredibly, and I get real hurt when I get critiqued really hard. Or I could be that guy, or I could be like Prince and have like 1,000 songs just there, you know? And it's just like, yeah, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, like, where it's like, if I value the creation more than the process, the creation is going to have an ego of its own that's going to deter me from making more music. Because if you look at, you know, playing a bunch of stuff that you're doing, and it's like, oh, I put so much effort in this song. But then you think about it, it's like, man, you put so much effort in that song. I mean, with all that effort, probably could have wrote like 10 really good songs that are just as good as that one awesome song. And you could take one great, beautiful, gigantic concept, you could run with it, and even, you know, get into doing stuff like song cycles. Or, you know, you had composers in the past, in the 1800s and early 1900s, where they would do these things where they'd have these leaders and stuff. You know, they would have these whole song cycles, and it's all just like one really random opera voice. It's a super, extremely extravagant, artful, you know, sort of expression of human voice, and then a piano. And we were cool, like as a society, as a civilization on the planet in other places. That's enough. That's good enough. So it's like, if I'm going to spend all day writing a bunch of music and value it and just, you know, get super duper hardcore, you know, ownership over it or something like that, then that's going to be something that, you know, could deter me from making a large collection of beautiful music. And I look at one song is always a pathway to like 5 or different iterations of that idea that could complement each other and make something beautiful. I have an entire story and experience out of it.
Yeah. So you mentioned before that you had performed a 4-hour live stream earlier today. One of the questions I also like to ask bands or musicians that I have on here is, when you're performing live, does time seem to slow down, or does it seem to drag on, or is it a mixture of both?
I think, so the way I look at synthesizers, when I look at my MIDI stuff and all my performance, I look at it like if you had a Zen garden, and if you had just a big old bonsai tree, and you're just like so into just chopping one little bit of this guy, and all you're thinking about in that moment, or you're not even thinking at all, is literally just being engrossed in the sound and expression and the tools at hand to make something beautiful. So for me, it's kind of like time stops completely. And then, you know, the idea of time and what it is replaced with tempo and pace and with progression and with, you know, iterations of ideas and repetition of that. And so when I look at when I'm performing and all that, I'm already stoked and excited because I'm like, man, I get to do what I love to do in my studio every day for like 8 hours a day, because synthesizers are like my video games.
Mm-hmm.
You know, synthesizers are my Netflix, and synthesizers are my Hulu. And so my lifestyle is very much wrapped around mastery of my craft. And when I get to perform my stuff, it's something that I get extremely excited about, because this is my challenge. This is like, hey, are you living up to what you're telling people, and are you living up to what you're doing? And that's the way I look at live performances. Like, this is where I get to see, did I really improve? Am I really making the most out of my time? And is what I'm putting my time in something that is making me happy? And is it something that's making me happy? Can I have other people be happy with me with that?
Yeah, I completely agree 110%. So do you have any rituals that you like to do before you perform? We have some people on here that talk about, you know, they like to have a few beers, they like to have a few shots, or they like to stretch. Do you have a specific ritual? Are you a superstitious person when it comes to being ready for a performance, or do you just like to wing it when you get to the venue?
What I have is I have this big old journal, and it's my performance and studio journal. And in that journal, I have my sessions in the studio when I'm doing new compositions, or if I'm doing like a practicing for performance, or if I'm making a beat tape, or something like that. I write in that journal I ask myself a series of questions. You know, what's my aesthetic goal? Like, what's my palette? What's my instrumentation? And how long is this going to be? And what am I doing? And what I do before every set is, even though I played for 4 hours today, I do like a 15-minute break in between each set because I mean, I'm not a robot.
Mm-hmm.
That would not be healthy.
Yep.
In those small breaks, I run away like a little recluse and hide away from people, and I find a quiet place and I write in my journal like, what am I going to do? What's my aesthetic goal here? What's my palette? And what am I going to achieve? Because I'm doing live on stage what I do in the studio when I'm producing music. When I'm writing and songwriting, it's pretty much the same process, just adjust it for a different setting with either by myself or with a whole bunch of other musicians.
Hmm.
So when it comes to my rituals and stuff, it's really just kind of about either by myself or with whatever musicians are performing with me. I make sure that we are all on the same page of what is going on, what we're expressing, what we're going to be doing, the story we're going to tell with our music, be it lyrically, be it instrumentally, and then I think about one step further, what's our place going to be? And I ask the musicians that perform with me, like, which are mostly multi-instrumentalists. No one, I've only had maybe like one person who plays shows with me that only plays one instrument. And I'll ask them, hey, what instrument you want to play, and where in the frequency ranges of our arrangement do you want to be at? And throughout the show, where do you want yourself to be in a sort of dynamic kind of idea? And I'll use concepts from, older post-minimalist composers or experimental composers from the 1960s and 70s. We're doing like little charts. I'm like, all right, here's this like squiggle that we got going on here. This little squiggle is kind of like our dynamic chart of how loud we're going to be, how soft we're going to be later throughout the live set, and then where we're going to go and how generally kind of how we're going to end it. And then after that, I talk about kind of a rough idea of, hey, here's the chord progressions I'm going to do. I'm going to do like 3 or 4 chord progressions for this one song. I'm going to have maybe like an A part, B part, C part. And generally, either I'll tell them, it's like, hey, these are the exact chords that's going on, and then I'll tell you when I'm going to do it. And or we'll use like sign language with each other and just be like, like blah, 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 ninjutsu stuff. And we'll just kind of like, have a lot of fun, waving our hands at each other, doing random stuff and trying to like, oh, hey, I'm going to do this synth lead, or oh, hey, I'm going to go and play this bass solo, or like, oh, hey, we're going to drop everything except for this one element. And be like, ah, and then boom, we drop everything but this one element. And that's something that, before every set, even if I'm only doing one set or if I'm doing 4 sets in a night, that's something that's talked about. So that we're on the same page. And it's okay if it's not perfect, because absolute worst case scenario, everybody that performs with me, they're going into my mixer and I can make them just not have any sound at all. And then I can fill in that gap until they have are doing what they want to do within the aesthetics of what we have going on.
That's unbelievable. So I picked up before that you said you teach music as well?
Yeah, I teach audio engineering and composition just locally to, either on like Facebook, FaceTime or stuff, or I'll, Skype, or, generally what I do here, I have a lot of musicians and producers that, I'll talk to, and we'll find me and we'll get together and I'll basically teach them how to use Ableton. And when I teach my students, I always ask them the same questions I always ask when I'm playing a live set. It's like, what are your goals? What do you want to do? Because the better a critical thinker someone is as a musician, as a composer, and as a producer, and as an arranger, the more critical thinking that goes into the songwriting process before even doing the songwriting process, the more thoughtful it is, and that makes it where you can develop more intuitivity with your tools, and you can have a quicker workflow with what you're doing, and you can have a much more quality, oriented sort of thing, or quantitative sort of thing. Where you want to have more songs, you can adjust your workflow this way. If you want to have more higher quality, more thoughtful songs for your compositions or for your productions, then you go about this other way. And I always try to like give my students the idea that if they love making music, then that could be an avenue for intrinsic fulfillment, so that when life happens, weird things happen, worst case scenario, that person knows that they're capable of creating beautiful art. And that's something that, I really teach my students, because you never know, like, what happens in life that will make it where knowing how to do something that will only make yourself happy is going to be the thing that's the difference between doing something rash and dangerous to yourself.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I've come to realize is that every generation of musicians sort of has their own personal struggle when it comes to music, when it comes to a style of music that they want to pursue, when it comes to just the overall audience response. What would you say this current generation, the millennial generation, struggles with most when it comes to music?
We struggle the most with the way that right now it's difficult for artists to get bigger shows in their own towns. And because it's difficult for that. A lot of larger venues are, the booking for those larger venues are all attached to whole companies that are contracted with major labels. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's that's the thing. It's a bigger venue, and these people are getting paid a lot of money, but a lot of those venues don't give their local artists as much support as they could. A lot of touring, bands, bigger bands and stuff. There's the record labels and stuff like that. There's a lot of safety in having their own pick and choice for their openers, for their tours and stuff like that. But because of that, and the safety that the industry likes to be with, then that makes it more difficult for up-and-coming artists to really get shows in bigger venues. And, on top of that, there are things like, contracts for shows. Like, let's say if I was to go to some town and play at their major venue in some smaller town or some metropolitan area, I'll probably have to sign a contract saying I can't perform within 100 miles of that place within a set amount of months, because that's for booking, that's for bringing draw with that stuff. But at the same time, the smaller musicians who aren't on big tours, who don't have the money and backing to do stuff like that, they're not able to reach that point, and what they're stuck with is more of the mom and pop venues, which are wonderful and beautiful and awesome. And I honestly enjoy playing at those greatly, because there's an intimate relationship with performances attached to those. But a lot of, if you're not playing a bar band or something, or if you're not, playing something that is of an aesthetic that is profitable for venues, then that puts a chokehold on, potential for exposure outside of things like Instagram and the internet.
Yeah, I've definitely found that too. We've had a lot of bands that have described similar scenarios. So now we go to the part of the podcast that is the audience favorite. It's the 5 questionnaire. I'm going to ask you 5 questions, get your responses. It's sort of like a get to know you thing where we just find out a little bit more about your music preferences and stuff like that. So for our first question is, out of all the songs that have ever been written in the history of music, what is one song that you personally wish you had written yourself, and why?
Gustav Mahler's Adagietto from his 4th Symphony. Because that is honestly, if there's a single piece of music that I know that expresses bittersweet love in such a fantastic way, and specifically Leonard Bernstein, the way he conducted that orchestral composition.
What was that song again? I didn't hear it as well the first time you said it.
It's Gustav Mahler's Adagietto from one of his symphonies. I think it was from his 4th Symphony. That piece of music right there is an absolutely incredible piece of music. And as much as I love synthesizers, as much as I love everything, the amount of thoughtfulness that was put into that composition, that's a level that takes a lifetime of mastery to achieve.
Absolutely. I'll definitely have to look it up. It's one of those things where I find with classical music, I'll look up those videos on YouTube where it's like 25 classical music songs that you really knew but you never thought you knew, and then it'll play all these songs. I'll be like, oh my god, I actually know all these things, but I just never knew the names to them, and I never know who wrote them just because they're so ingrained in pop culture. So I'll definitely have to give that a look up. But for our second question, out of all the artists that have ever lived, you can be dead or alive, either one, doesn't matter. If you could perform live for one show with any artist, who would it be?
Man, that's a tough choice. Probably Boris Canada, or that string.
Who was that? Sorry, I didn't get it.
it would probably be a toss, a coin toss between Boards of Canada and Apex Twin.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's awesome. So now for our third question. Out of all the venues on the planet, if you could perform live at any venue and you had your pick of the whole litter, where would you perform and why?
Oh, man. If I could go and do a Pink Floyd style live at Pompeii, and have that just be the most sick, nasty of live streams.
Mm-hmm. That would be unbelievable. I always say, well, it was close to where you were, but it wasn't in Scotland, but Slane Castle in Ireland is my choice.
Oh, man, nice.
Yeah, that's a great one. So now we get to the real nitty-gritty. 1 second. My throat was clogged for 1 second. But now we get to the real nitty-gritty. Guilty pleasure songs. What is a guilty pleasure song that you enjoy that most people would never guess that you like?
Oh, man. Oh. Oh. God, all these puppers. so many puppers. Oh, man. Oh, yeah, what's up?
The podcast is being overwhelmed with cuteness now.
Oh, yeah. I would probably... Sorry, answer that question one more time.
Oh, yeah, no problem. So what is a guilty pleasure song that you enjoy that no one else would... that you wouldn't think that anyone else would guess that you enjoy?
Oh, man, I'd probably say it's just... pretty much every 1990s, early 2000s anime intro.
Yeah.
I got a thing for like those just like super like retro, super over sequenced, just like way too many bells and like just terrible like Sailor Moon kind of stuff. Yeah. And just the goofiest stuff. I'd probably say like Dragon Ball Z theme song from the 1980s.
All right, yeah, hang on, I'm writing that down right here. Absolutely. So now, for our final question, if there was an artist that, again, I've just got to preface this first, you wouldn't kill them, they would still be alive, but if you could make it so that they would never play music ever, and all of their music would be erased from the public conscious, no one would ever know that they existed as a musician, what artist would you do that to? And again, I have to say, we've had this asked a million times, no, they are not dead. They would maybe just choose to be like a plumber or some other profession other than being a musician. But who would you do that to if you had that power?
Oh, man, dude. That's like... No, I don't think I have it in me to do that to anybody.
Not even like a Justin Bieber?
No, actually, I would be really happy and really, really happy for him if, whatever sort of like aesthetic of music that really fulfills him as a person is something he rides with, irregardless of whatever sort of contracts or whatever stuff is going on in the industry for him. If he does something that makes him happy and makes him feel good and feel beautiful, then dude, I support it 100%. Because at the end of the day, that's him giving other people permission to be themselves. And when you give other people permission to be themselves, then everybody gets to do a lot of beautiful stuff. They don't gotta worry about stupid stuff all the time.
So I'm going to put down for number 5, he's too nice to answer, which is a positive thing. You're the first person that I've had that happen to. So, well, we usually have, like, Justin Bieber was a famous answer. Post Malone is another famous answer that a lot of people give. But where can people find your music? So 12 Olympians, do you have a Spotify, iTunes, YouTube? Where can people find your music?
Yeah, actually, so I have a free stream of my album Sky Days on YouTube. It's on Spotify. And it's on iTunes. It's on pretty much everything. That's out. And if you're around Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I'm playing a show out there, I have a plethora of beat tapes that I only give out at my shows. And, totally can give those out on request, though, because I'm not a weirdo. But you can find me on Bandcamp as well. I would honestly say if anybody was to buy my music, I recommend doing it at Bandcamp because it's at a donation basis and you can just pay wherever you want to. Like iTunes is great and awesome, and all those other things, Spotify and stuff like that. Stream all day, all you want. But if you want to buy my music, either get my music for free and donate it to me, or donate it to something cooler than me. And because money's coming up, but
That's awesome. You're the first person on here that's ever been like that, and I really, really appreciate it. Do you have any upcoming shows in the North Carolina area that we'd like to plug? Because believe it or not, other than Minnesota, I've had probably about 7 or 8 guests from North Carolina area, and we've become pretty popular down there. So do you have any upcoming shows in the North Carolina area?
So I moved from Asheville, North Carolina, to Chattanooga like 6 months ago, and I'm actually I'm getting ready and prepared to do kind of like a small spring tour in the near future, and kind of spending the fall really developing Chattanooga's scene and really get involved and super in deep with all that stuff. But right now I don't have anything planned for in North Carolina, but I definitely have intentions of really kind of bouncing between Asheville, going out to Raleigh, and really getting super into Charlotte, and kind of swerving back around and weaving my way through. But that's something that I have to get booked, and I have to spread my wings and do fun stuff out there with.
Any local shows in Chattanooga that you'll be playing in that you have scheduled for the near future?
Yeah, this Saturday I'm gonna be playing at this kind of like cool little coffee shop cafe called The Spot. Nice. And they have a fantastic stage there, and I'm gonna be doing a sort of kind of a fusion of doing a bunch of hip hop, but also going to be doing a lot of really interesting just art music. And I love playing at venues like that because it gives you the flexibility to do stuff like art music. And what I intend on doing is a completely analog, live looping set where I'm just doing a lot of stuff with a bunch of analog synthesizers and getting super Brian Eno with it. Making some really interesting soundscapes and doing stuff like that. But then immediately after that, transitioning to some, super chill, R&B, hip-hop oriented jamtronica that I'll be doing pretty much immediately right after that. And, the place, mom and pop, spots like that, give a lot of flexibility for someone who likes to live stream, because not only am I in a public space performing music, but I'm going to be live streaming direct audio from my computer and the internet during that show too.
That's awesome. So I like to ask these final 2 questions to every guest before we cut her off here. But for the first question, if someone were to walk up to you on the street and say, "Hey, I'm really thinking about forming a band or just becoming a musician," what would be the best piece of advice that you would give them in order to be successful as a musician?
I would say think about music as a lifestyle and think about what you can do to help each other, and then find people to help them too. If say like one of the bandmates wants to be an aspiring producer, then that bandmate's going to learn how to take his skills or her skills or whoever's skills, take their skills and figure out how they can take those skills, help others, achieve their aesthetic goals of their music. And then for whole bands, I recommend, them to think about really working as a team, because everybody's playing in an ensemble, playing in a band. I'm a classically trained musician, but I've played in a lot of non-traditional ensembles as well. And there's not really a difference whatsoever at all between a jazz band, between an orchestra, and between playing in a bar band or a rock band or doing some weird jamtronica thing. Everybody is playing an instrument that is a tool to make sound, and it has its place. And everybody has to think about how can they artfully express their place in their ensemble in a way where everybody's benefiting from it and everybody's working together to achieve their aesthetic goals as artfully and masterfully as possible.
That is great advice. So, lastly, if you could talk to yourself 5 years ago, what would be the best advice that you'd give your 5-year-old younger self musically?
I would say learn audio engineering earlier.
Yeah.
And I would also think that to not get hung up with details and to be okay with making a bad song, because just like in painting or in art, just get all your bad paintings out of the way. Just get them out of the way, and just make every iteration, every new thing, just a step better than the other thing. And when you reach a point where you want to have everything at the same quality, when you write one badass song, and then you take that one badass song and see how you can take those elements and concepts and expand it into something bigger than itself.
I couldn't agree more, man. And again, Will Bowers, we appreciate having you on the show. It was absolutely great. 12 Olympians. Everyone definitely go and check these guys out. Or this guy out, I should say. I'm used to saying these guys. But
I've got some. I have a whole bunch of band-aids.
Yeah. So 12 Olympians, go check these guys out for sure. I mean, just talking with Will, you can tell just the inspiration and just this guy really knows his stuff when it comes to music, and we wish him nothing but the best. Again, I will leave all the links down below for all their stuff, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, Bandcamp, SoundCloud, everything. I'll leave the links down below for these guys, and check these guys out. If you're in the Chattanooga area, again, check out him at that show that he plugged before. And do you have any? Are you working on any albums or any music, or are you just focusing more on the performance aspect?
So because it's they're kind of one and the same for me personally. What I do is there's a venue called Barley down here, and there's another one called JJ's Bohemia, and some of the more local venues in Chattanooga that really give a lot of support to the local artists, massive amounts. And what I do is I've been consistent with this for like 4 years now, and that's I do like an album's worth of music every month. I'd get like 30 to 40 minutes of music recorded with the same level of thoughtfulness as if I was going to be producing an album for like a Grammy or something. And to have that sort of self-discipline to reach that high is what I really try to do to myself. And so like I'm always recording stuff, but I like to do this concept kind of like a content release schedule, where it's like I have these great songs and these great ideas and these great beautiful things, but there's all these things that I release in the public that these are my art. If there's going to be an album release, this is like I spent a whole year every month writing an album every month. This thing I'm giving you is my hardest, most gigantic attempt at really like this is and it's like the beat tape stuff, the monthly stuff, that's just that's stuff I give away at shows, kind of like Aphex Twin and just Analord stuff. He had all these really awesome vinyl only release albums that people who really love this music got to enjoy, because they got to be around them, got to go to the shows and got to go and like get to know them, and or got in the know for like these limited release things. And I think like having that sort of special intimacy with my beat tape stuff that I do, coupled with my song cycles and all that, and then taking the trial and error from all of those things, and trying to like be like every year or so, or every couple of years, like have something like there for like it's like, hey, this is me at my best, my very best, just for you, kind of thing. Because I get fulfilled just making music. If I'm going to put it online to display to someone, it's going to be something that's for more than myself. And it takes a lot of consideration.
Man, it was just a pleasure, man, having you on. Just hearing you talk about music, everyone here, even the audience included, I hope you understand this guy's passion just by listening to him, and I definitely do. And we wish you nothing but the best. If you need anything promotion-wise, you have an upcoming show, or you have upcoming music being released, you let me know and I'll plug it. No questions asked. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure having you on. Again, lastly, 12 Olympians, leave all the links down below. Is there any other local bands in the Chattanooga area that you would like to plug or talk about?
Yeah, Shiggy's Bad Knee, super awesome guys.
All right.
These Jared and Drew Author, these fantastic brothers. They do all sorts of really great stuff. Kind of like Camper Van Beethoven stuff, and when they have the rock band stuff going on, but they also do this really awesome, like, computerless, like all hardware, like Electribe oriented, live sets that they do, where they just have a bunch of Electribe with a bunch of synthesizers and a desktop setup, and that to me is like absolutely mind blowing, because I'm so used to just using a computer for all my stuff. They don't use a computer to do live sets and improvise stuff, and those guys are so incredible. Those are local in Chattanooga, and I guess another guy I give a shout out to my buddy Alpine Inc. down out in Asheville, North Carolina, and there's a lot of guys. Super wonderful, amazing people, with all the stuff that they do. But, yeah, that's absolutely awesome. So, again, 12 Olympians, Will Bowers, we appreciate you coming on. And this is DD on the Spot, Ryan Johnson signing out. Have a great day, everyone.